Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be sharing 5 ways to use highlighters in your sketchbooks, and this is a drawing, doodle, art ideas sort of video, and I'm just going to be sharing 5 simple ways that I use highlighters in my own sketchbooks. And the highlighters that I'm using today are the Pilot Friction Pastel set, and they were supplied to me by the Kawaii Pen Shop, so I want to say thank you to the Kawaii Pen Shop for sending me these highlighters to use in today's video. And if you haven't heard of the Kawaii Pen Shop, it's a really cute online stationery and pen shop. They stock a lot of items from Japan and Korea, and the shop is really adorable. They have really nice products, and they're also offering you guys a 10% discount. So if you'd like to check out the shop and you find something you like, they have free worldwide shipping and you get a 10% discount. All the information is in the description box below. So now let's get into the pages. So for this first one, what I'm doing is I'm just using the highlighters to create a simple striped background. And this is one of the techniques that I particularly like to use as a warm-up session, or when I'm not quite sure what I want to draw, or I'm sort of not quite sure which direction I want to go in. I love to just grab some colours and to fill in the background like this. It's also a useful technique if you ever suffer from fear, the fear of the blank page scenario, where you're just staring at the blank page and it's all a bit overwhelming. I find that if you just place some colour down onto the page, whether it's in stripes or blocks, and I've done this before in another video, but I find it's a really effective way of kind of kick-starting the creativity, and it takes away the blank page so it's not quite so overwhelming. At least that's what I find from my experience. So what I've done is I've used the chisel nib on the highlighters to its advantage, and the nice thing about the highlighters, well, these ones in particular, and I think most highlighters I've seen, have these flat-ended chisel nibs. And they're really great for creating these nice lines, because obviously they're meant for highlighting text and things. But I find it's really easy to create a nice striped background like this. And I really like to use this, as I was saying earlier, as a warm-up session, as a way of kind of just getting started in my sketchbook. And I really like layering up the colours. I think it's a really fun little technique. I try to stick to 3 colours. As you can see, I haven't used all the colours that come in the set here. I've just used 3 colours because I find that 3 colours, when you're doing these sorts of backgrounds, work best. Sometimes if you add too many colours, it can look a bit muddy and it's not very cohesive. So I do find that 3 colours work best, and I've just gone over with a nice black brush pen to draw in the face and the little circle elements, and I think that's a really fun little page and a good way to just kind of get started with the highlighters. Right, so on this next page I'm going to start out by sketching in a girl, and I'm going to be using the highlighters to give her some colour, and I'm going to colour just the shadows and the highlights with the highlighters. And I particularly, even though highlighters are not a colouring supply in that way, they're meant for highlighting text and using in that way, but I do like using them for adding some highlight to my sketches and to my concept pieces, and just to add some colour to these sorts of drawings in my sketchbook. And I do find that even though they don't blend together, you can do a certain amount of colouring with them. And the other nice thing about them is that they don't bleed through the sketchbook page, as most of my alcohol-based markers do, so that's quite nice. I can use both sides of the sketchbook here. And I like to choose a darker colour as the main shadow, particularly on the face here. So I'm using this purple, and I'm just placing it where the shadows would be. And the other reason I find that this exercise is quite useful is that I can sort of practice my shading in a very simplified way. So I can go in and I can just place where the shadows would be and not worry about blending, not worry about highlight colours or blush colours or anything like that on the face. I can just go in and sort of just experiment with just putting down the shadows, and I particularly like this more simplistic way of colouring, and the highlighters are fun for doing that. And I also like doing these sorts of pages as a warm-up or a wind down session. So when I just want to sit down and do a little bit of colouring, or drawing for myself in my sketchbook, or maybe work on some concept pieces, I like to add colour to everything. I very rarely just have sketches in my sketchbook. I like to add lots of colour to my pages, even if they're very simplified. So I particularly like using the highlighters for that. Now for this next page, the idea is to create a doodle pattern, and you can use any objects you like. I'm just going to draw flowers, leaves, some bubbles and some butterflies on this page, but I suggest you pick 3 or 4 objects that you're really comfortable with drawing, and then just doodle them out. And I find that this page is actually quite therapeutic. It's very relaxing to make, and I find, you know, I'm not worrying about how it turns out. I'm just filling a page with all these lovely colours and just sort of experimenting with a layout and just having some fun. And also the nice thing about these the highlighter nibs is that you can get quite a lot of line variation, because they have a broad flat nib that you can get a very broad flat line from, but if you turn the nib on its side, you can get a very thin line. So you could actually do quite a lot of line variation. And I've also seen people online use these pens for doing hand lettering. Now I can't hand letter at all, so I haven't shown that example in this video, but if you do like hand lettering, then do check out some other videos here on YouTube and look up hand lettering with highlighters, because there are some nice examples and they do work quite well for that as well. So that's just a fun little page, and I really like that kind of page as a warm-up, again, because I don't have to think too much about it, and I can just kind of let my hands kind of glide across the paper and just draw random objects, and I find it very relaxing doing that sort of page. So this next idea is to create a page full of pattern swatches, but I like to call these washi swatches, and they reminded me of washi tape. I'm sure you guys know what washi tape is, but just in case some of you don't, a washi tape is just a brightly coloured or patterned tape. And what I particularly like washi tape, and I've seen somewhere online people, they take washi tape and they just lay it down on their sketchbooks in these little sort of swatches. They make a washi tape swatch page, and I really liked the look of that, but I thought it'd be fun to create my own little pattern swatches. So what I'm doing is I've just drawn out some little rectangles in different sizes, and some of them have cut marks, some of them don't, just to give it some variation. And then I'm just going in and I'm taking each highlighter and I'm adding a layer of colour, or I'm adding some strips. I'm just sort of varying the colours and varying what I'm putting down as my first layer. And the other thing you'll see me doing in a minute is, because these are the Pilot friction highlighters, and the friction highlighters have this little rubber end to them, and you can actually rub out the pen ink, which I think is actually very impressive. I have heard of the friction pens before, but when I was first using these, I was a bit skeptical about how well they would rub out, but they really do rub out really well. So that's quite a fun little technique. You saw me rubbing out some white lines on some of the swatches there, and once I put that first layer down, I then went in with my pink multi-liner pen that I have, and I'm just sort of adding some little shapes, adding some more layers with the highlight colours. Even though the highlighters are not meant for colouring, they don't blend or layer very well, and you can't layer too many colours on top of each other. You can certainly do enough to create some nice little washi swatches in your sketchbook. And I actually also like this page for practice. Now, as I said, most of the pages that I'm showing you today are ones that I use as a warm-up, or just sort of like a fun sketching winding down session, perhaps, something just for me in my sketchbook. But I also find that doing these little swatches is a fun way to sort of experiment. So if you particularly enjoy creating patterns, which I do, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's quite fun to make these little swatches, and then if you come up with a colour combination or a design that you particularly like, then you can go ahead and draw it up larger using, and maybe draw it up on the computer if you wanted. So I like to use these sorts of pages as concepts, and just sort of a practice session, but also just a session to kind of experiment with some ideas and to be honest, I would love to design washi tape one day. So this is just a sort of a little ideas for some of the things that I might do, and some of these designs I particularly liked, and I think they'd make really nice washi tape. So the last thing I did there was to add a little shadow with a grey Copic marker, just to make them look a little bit like they are bits of tape that I've stuck on the page. So this last page idea is to create pixel art, or pixel faces is what I'm doing today. So one of the things that I really like to do when I'm using the highlighters is to take advantage of the nib, because they have a very particular chisel nib, and one of the things that it's very good for doing is creating these little squares. And I thought it would be fun to do some pixel shapes, and I'm just doing, they're meant to be circles. They didn't turn out exactly like a circle, but they were close enough for my purposes. But you could draw any little shapes you like. You could even draw some characters out, rectangles, circles. You could draw some triangles, or you could do, if you look up pixel art, you'll find out some really nice ideas for just using simple squares to build shapes and characters. And then I'm just using one colour per circle, and I'm just drawing out these little pixel circles, and I find that it's very useful to do a little sketch beforehand. So in the upper right hand corner there, you can see that I sketched out how many squares I would need and the shape before I went onto the sketchbook page with the fine liners, because I didn't want to draw underneath the fine liners on this page, because I didn't want any of the pencil lines showing underneath. So that's why I did a little sketch, and I found that worked quite well. And now I'm just going in and adding some little goofy smiley faces, and I think this page is really cute, and it was the quickest one to make out of all of them. None of these pages take very long in today's video, but they're all fun little sessions that you can do in your sketchbook if you'd like some ideas for how to use your highlighters in your sketchbooks. So these are the 5 pages. Which of these pages did you like best? I particularly like how they all came out. I don't think I have a personal favourite, although I really do like the little goofy faces, but I think they're all very fun, and this particular set of highlighters is also very nice. I particularly like the pastel colours. So make sure you check out the Kawaii Pen Shop if you like cute stationery supplies, and if you find something you like, don't forget I have a discount code for you in the description box below. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure you leave me a comment down below and let me know which page you like best, and if you have any further suggestions for how to use your highlighters in your sketchbooks, make sure you leave a comment so we can all read them. And I hope you all have a wonderful week, guys, and I will see you next time.